Centerpoint Archery, celebrating the timeless traditions of bow hunting. Inline vertical crossbows and draw lock. For bow hunters and target shooters worldwide, Crossbow Accessory Company, manufacturing safe and portable crossbow decocking system. And Taiwee, live your passion, Taiwee. Raven Crossbows, relentless innovation, that's the Raven way. And Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota, aim true and hunt free. Hey everybody, I'm Michael, the owner and creator of Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota, and this podcast topic is about a hunting routine each of us has, or at least we probably should have a hunting routine. An archery hunting routine requires preparation and some discipline and adaptability to ensure success, of your hunt, and so that it's also safe and ethical. We don't want to be out there and not be ready for any of those situations. So anyways, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about the hunting routine that I kind of have and what that is all involves. And based on my interest in crossbow hunting and Minnesota's hunting culture, here's a daily kind of seasonal routine. It's kind of tailored for archery hunting with the focus on crossbows, but can be used for traditional bows as well. This assumes a typical deer hunting scenario, deer hunting and crossbow use. The first item I think we should talk about will be your gear check and maintenance. So inspect your bow for wear, your strings, cables, limbs. You guys have heard a lot of this before from us. Scope and rail, and remember to do the same with any of your backpack gear. Now you remember, this is a routine you get into here, so if you get this stuff done before the actual day to hunt, it'll pay dividends. So make sure you're replacing any worn out parts, lubricate your rail for crossbow, wax your strings, ensure your bolts are fletched properly and broadheads are sharp. We owe that to the animals we hunt. Test your rangefinder and optics and stuff, and make sure that your batteries and stuff are good to go. And check quivers and maybe even stabilizers if you have them, things of that nature. That's on your bow or crossbow. That's a pretty important step. I think we're all familiar with that. But again, this is just my routine here that I go through. And then next I practice your shooting. I like to start shooting in August, which we have already, and I try to shoot 2 to 3 times a week. Now I have a range in my 100-yard backyard, so it's kind of convenient for me. But otherwise, if a lot of your cities have archery clubs, I know a lot of them don't allow the crossbows in there, but you could ask around and see if they allow them if you're shooting a crossbow. Otherwise, you can set a target up in your backyard and practice on that. But set your targets up at varying distances, or if you're using, say, one target, then try to mimic, your field conditions. Place a target, say 20 yards away, 30, 40, then 50, and 32 yards away. Just put it somewhere and try to first guess the distance to that target as you're practicing, and then use your rangefinder to actually validate that distance. Okay. Also, a good practice is practice however you're going to be hunting. In other words, practice from standing or kneeling, elevated positions like a tree stand would be, or ground blind. And also focus on using the gear that you plan to use in the field. You know, like if you have a, say you're going to wear a mask, a 3D camo mask, then you want to put that on while you're practicing. Get used to using your gloves. You know, if you use like a hip shot, that's what I have, that I place on my hip to hold my crossbow as I am sitting. So I use that while I'm practicing also. So yeah, I mean, any of that stuff that you're using, you know, whatever gear you got on that you're going to be using, focus on that so your form is there when you're ready to hunt. Also simulate some low light conditions, like shoot at dawn and dusk, to kind of prepare for that, those typical hunting times. You know, that's when the deer seem to be moving more, are during those low light conditions. So that's what I would say to do. That's what I try and do anyway. So the next topic on our routine, so we've got our equipment and we have practice shooting with that equipment and our gear and stuff. So we're kind of fine tuning that right there. Next I do is like scouting. So a few things in that I suggested really works well. First of all, if you're hunting on a private piece of land, I need you to be sure and contact your landowners to verify that you still have access, okay, and that all the rules and stuff are the same and where you can hunt on that land stays the same. That's pretty much common sense, but you know, just kind of keep it in the back of your mind that you need to get that done before the season opener. Also, contact any of your hunting partners that you hunt with. You know, see if that relationship's going to be there this year as it was, say, last year, and you know, revisit that and make sure that's solid too. And then the next thing you do, or you want to probably do, is study some of your aerial maps or use apps. I like to use OnX Hunt for terrain and access points, looking at public land spots especially. So I got an idea of what is there as I go to scout. Then once you have that part done, you kind of know where you're going to go and what you're looking for in that area. Then it's time to visit your hunting area. Try to identify game trails there, bedding areas, food sources. You know, we have other videos or podcasts out there too that cover a lot more in detail on identifying those types of areas and then food sources. In fact, we just did a podcast on eggcorn strategy and stuff, and how to use that to your advantage. And then plan where your stand will be, you know, or build setup areas around what you found out there. You know, even if you've hunted that land before, things do change. You know, crops change, land masses change, fences might be put up. You know, I've even had drainage ditches dug out where I would cross into another area to hunt, and then somebody, you know, dug it out and I couldn't get across it. So it's just good to check all that out. Set up your trail cameras too and monitor deer movement, you know. And then once you get them put in there and you've done that, I just stay out of there till your opener, till season, so you're not spreading a bunch of, you know, scent around your hunting area. So our recap so far, again, we have our routine is going to be maintenance on our gear and our backpacks and stuff like that, and then practice shooting. Shooting with our focus on our gear and our form and low light conditions, stuff like that, and then scouting, going through and making sure your land is the same and you've got permissions and stuff like that. Well, then we have to be legal and safe also. That's our next topic here. So review your Minnesota hunting regulations or whatever state you're in to make sure that you're compliant with those regulations. And renew your hunting license and tags if you have to. Make sure that they're up to date. In other words, like if you're going to ride a four-wheeler to your side, you got to make sure your tags are current on that. And that you have your licenses and everything with you when you go out to hunt. And also another important topic, I think we've discussed this before, but just make a refresher on your contact that will know where you are hunting. So if you, God forbid, fall out of your tree stand, or you twist an ankle, or you know, something happens to you out there and you need help, they know where you're at for that hunt. That's a very important thing, especially the older you get. And yeah, so that's just a good tip there too. So that kind of concludes the stuff up to this point. Now what I'm going to get into now is your in-season daily routine for the morning, your pre-hunt. You know, you wake up in the morning, you eat a light breakfast and some coffee, check the weather, you know, the wind, the temperature, barometers, whatever. Plan your clothing and scent control around that. And then wear your scent-free layers clothing using like a scent eliminating sprays and things like that. Load your gear. Make sure you bring water and some snacks with you if you plan on being out there the whole day. You should just make sure you stay hydrated. And then, for God's sakes, make sure you use the restroom before you go. That's a mistake I think we've all made at one time or another. So then the next thing is, when you arrive at your hunting area, whether it be public or private, make sure you arrive there with at least enough time to get to your stand without rushing, you know, and sweating it up and causing all kinds of noise and commotion out there. So you want to kind of move quietly to your stand or blind. So you know, try to avoid those game trails that you scouted out before. And during your scouting, you should have came up with some type of a entrance and exit. What would you call them, paths or whatever, to get in and out of your spot with the least disturbance to that area. So once you get set up in there, you know, in your morning hunt in the stand, try and stay as still as you can. It can get to be tough sometimes to sit still, because we all live in such a high-paced, fast-paced world, especially during those first few hunts where you're, you know, maybe not prepared just to sit there as still as you can. But be alert, be patient, and you're blind, and good things will happen. And then while you're sitting there too, at the beginning, when you got enough light and stuff there, take your range distances to landmark certain things for your shot accuracy. So use your range finders, look at a tree or a stump or whatever you pick out that you can remember how far that yardage is. So when a deer move in, you don't have to necessarily grab that range finder. You kind of know, okay, that tree is 30, this stump is 20. Anything in between there, I'm good to go. So that's another good tip there. And in these early season days, using your calls, your grunt and bleat, real sparingly, and kind of base that on your deer activity and the time of the season. You don't want to go out there necessarily opening morning and start grunting and rattling, because I don't know, in my area anyways, those bucks wouldn't be at that stage yet. So You know, they might spar a little bit here and there, but nothing real heavy at that time. So just use those sparingly. Monitor your wind direction always. That is a big factor too. And adjust your position if needed, you know, to stay downwind. I don't know what everybody's using for wind indicators. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there. I like to just use milkweed as a wind indicator and thermal indicator, because for one thing it's free, and for another thing that stuff will float in the air so nicely, and it'll follow those, not only the wind direction, but if you've got thermals rising or falling, you'll be able to see that with an indicator like that. So now you've made it through the morning and it's midday, and I will give you guys a tip that most hunters will leave their morning stand before 10 a.m. or right around there. So I always make it a practice to try and stay in mine until at least 11. You know, the deer move when other hunters move too, and sometimes they can just push them toward you, especially if you're on a public land. So keep that in mind. If you don't have any activity up to that point, you might want to return to your vehicle or back to your home, get some rest and food. And you know, at that point, if you don't have to go into the woods to check your trail cameras, it's not a bad idea at that point to take a look at what's running around in your area there on your images there. And also, that's a good time too to go to new areas and scout, you know, if the hunt is really slow, you know. So you could also practice a few shots if you wanted to with your crossbow and make sure you stay sharp and everything's working good. And then it's time to start getting ready for your evening hunt. So your evening hunt, again, most hunters will go back out around 3 p.m. I like to be there at 2, again, because they start moving around, and so does the deer. Now those times can change depending upon what part of the season you're in, as far as, you know, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You know, of course it gets darker towards the latter part of the season, so you got to be out there a little bit earlier. So, and just kind of repeat your morning hunting tactics, you know, stay quiet, monitor your wind, check your yardages, things like that, so that you're prepared. And also be prepared for quick shots, because as the light fades in the evening there, and you know your legal shooting hours here in Minnesota is 30 minutes before sunrise, 30 minutes after sunset. So be ready, because when that light starts to fade, those deer like to get out and move. They're going from their bed to the feeding area or a staging area, and sometimes they just seem to pop up and just like they're magically there. So just be aware of that. So this is a routine that I try to follow with some added items, you know, like spraying down at my truck with scent control. But sometimes you have to change up your routine as the season advances. So just keep that in mind. And you know, this routine is not set in gold. Make your own. Use what works for you. And that's real important. You know, you can try to, like anything else, if you try to be like someone else or do what somebody else is doing, a lot of the stuff they do will work, but you also got to find out what works just for you. By following a routine, you will get to know what works for you and what doesn't. So you can also ensure, you know, an enjoyable, successful experience that way. And that's why we're all out hunting, right? And you also can keep your traditions and the ethics of our sport intact. And you know, that's really what it's about, is to be able to go and enjoy yourself, be successful at it, And for God's sake, involve other people in hunting too. We need people to be out there, getting into hunting and hopefully supporting our sport. So I guess I've babbled enough about all this. So thanks again for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos, on Spotify and YouTube. Both are under Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota. Check out our Facebook group. That's a bunch of great guys and gals there. That's under Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota. We have a website also, www.cbhom2 at wixsite.com/mysite2. And I'd like to ask you guys, if you would, after you're done listening to this, take a minute and add some comments on your routine and what you like and dislike about it, and just to see if whatever you do, it'll be interesting for me to see too. Maybe I can add some of that to my routine to help me be a better hunter too. And that's really what we're doing all this for too, is to get better at what we do and enjoy it. So until next time, always remember, aim true and hunt free.